Welcome back to another episode of Schmattz Outdoors. We're continuing on with the In the Fur Shed series. Today I'm going to go over the gear I use for coyote trapping. I've had a few people ask me kind of what I use. I'm going to go through kind of the equipment I use here real quick. Kind of tell you what I do and how I use this stuff. I'm not going to actually show making any sets or nothing today, but I'm just going to go through my gear list of what I use for coyote trapping. To start with, we got traps. I use almost exclusively MB550 traps. There'll be a video coming out kind of how those are set up. Down here there's 4 Bridger number 3 dogless, a dozen Duke number 4 4-coiled, and then some Montana number 3 dogless as well in the back. I use the Bridger number 3s kind of the same way I would use my MB550s, but the Duke number 4s and the Montana number 3s, I typically won't use Duke number 4s on fields like that are actually worked up, on field edges. They just take such a big hole to get them things buried, so it's nice to have the looser dirt from the them working up the field. And the Montana number 3s, I typically put them like in a spot that I may catch one coyote every 2 years or something like that. It may not be a every year producer. It may sit there all season and not catch anything, or it may catch a couple. But I typically, I don't know, for lack of a better term, I'll put them in in spots that I maybe don't think have a super high percentage of catching something, but they may. And if I have to drive by there already, I might as well have a trap there. It takes 30 seconds to check it every day, and I can just, stop, binocular it, or drive by it, see that it's, there's nothing in it, and keep moving. So I'll use the Montana number 3 and the Duke 4s for kind of that same purpose. They're kind of off. Usually I only set them by themselves. If a spot is good enough, for one trap, or if I think it's good enough for 2 traps, I use MB550s there, because I feel like there's a better chance or a higher percentage chance that I'm going to be making catches there, and I have a little more confidence in them. I've never had any bad luck with the Montana number 3 or the Duke 4s. I just like the MB550s. Alright, we'll kind of just give you a quick overview of what we got here. So this is all the gear that I typically use for making coyote sets, and I'll go through each item here kind of one at a time so you can see what I got, and I'll explain what I'm using. We'll start with this guy here. This is just a kneeling pad. I've used a few different ones. This one's still dirty from last year. I'm going to actually take a hose and wash it off and scrub it off a little bit. I use the same side on the ground every time. So this side here is dirty. You can see that side's pretty clean. This is the side I kneel on every time. So the dirty side goes down every time. That way it kind of keeps my pants and stuff clean. I don't know, it's just habit. And I actually typically always have it set that way, so the handle's on that side. It makes zero difference, but it's just kind of habit. I grab the thing and I kneel on it. Before I get out of my truck, I use these Semper Force. I use large size. They're latex, like a milking glove. That's what I use for making sets. I have a box like this in my truck all the time. As soon as I get out of my truck, when I'm going to either make a set or I have a catch and I need to remake my trap, I will grab a pair of gloves and put them on as I'm getting out of my truck. So I always have an open box of these riding around on the passenger seat of my truck. And again, as soon as I get out of my truck, I grab a pair of gloves, because I don't touch any of my coyote traps with bare hands. So all these traps have been cleaned and rinsed and everything. They will hang here until basically the day before season, and then I'll put them in totes. And when I'm doing that, I'll pack them with use latex gloves and pack them in there. And before I touch them to put them in the ground, I'll have gloves on, these latex gloves. I'll come back to the bag. I use These are muffin wrappers or large, extra large cupcake wrappers. I use these for my pan covers. I keep them in just a little Ziploc bag, and then I keep them in the main compartment of my bag, of my trapper's bag here. I'll take out one at a time. Typically I try to do this before I make my set or before I touch, you know, the animal or anything else. So I try to keep the rest of them clean. You can actually kind of slough one off at a time. We'll see if I can do it. Typically I can slough one off either on the inside or the outside without even opening the bag, and then I will take and crumple them up into a little ball and then flatten them back out. Typically that takes the crunchiness out of them so they aren't so crunchy, and then they typically lay flatter. I use, I don't know, I think it's called a sod buster, I'm not real sure. This is my second one. I actually broke the handle off on the first one I had, and I actually fixed the handle, so now I use it as a spare. That's what I use for digging trap beds, pounding stakes in, everything for coyote trapping. I don't use this for anything but coyote trapping. It stays in my coyote bag. We got your dirt sifter, but I don't like how big, I don't know if you could see, you'd see the pattern on here, this kind of X pattern that goes like that. That's the main sifter. I add 1/4 inch wire mesh to the inside of that, and I just kind of fold it in there, tuck it in the corners, and it just stays in there. Again, I'll need to rinse this guy out before the season here. I add that in there. To me, I get a little bit finer sift, and I don't get all the little rocks and stuff on my sets when I sift with that. If it's muddy, it does make it kind of a pain because the stuff packs in there really bad. This guy here is just a cookie cutter for an MB550. I only have it in my bag basically the first day, maybe the second day if I don't get my whole line put out the first day, because once you stake a trap down, you can no longer use this because you can't, there's nowhere for the chain to go out around that thing. So once you make a catch and stuff, you can't use them. I didn't really think about that before I bought the thing, otherwise I probably wouldn't have bought it. But yeah, I basically only use it on the first day. It works really good actually for like a spot like this where there's like a grass or a pasture or something like that. In the edges of fields where the dirt is soft, I actually typically even use this, even though I have that in my bag. This year, these are Bridger setters. They actually work really nice. The smaller side of these, so that side's a little bit bigger than this side. The smaller side of that fits perfectly on an MB550. This year I'm actually going to throw these in my bag for like the opening day or two, kind of for the same deal as that guy. They actually, I think, are going to save my hands. Your hands, like the side of my hands get really sore from setting even like 25-30 traps in a day. You know, like on the opening day, I'll get in probably 35-40 coyote sets in one day. And I think these are gonna save my hands a little bit on that first day. So we're gonna try those the first day, see how they work. I can use it in a few sets, and if they don't work, typically when I'm making a set, I take my hammer and lay it on the side, and I will set my trap basically using the hammer as something solid. Otherwise your trap pushes into the dirt and all that. It gets to be kind of a pain, so I set my trap kind of on the side of my hammer. This is my trap covering. It is dried and sifted peat moss, and then it's just a gallon plastic jug. This guy was leaking a little bit last year, so I just taped it up with duct tape to get it to quit leaking. This guy here is a 10-foot rope, and what I have on each end, I got a loop tied on each end. And then what I have is, this is a 4-foot gray electric fence post. A lot of guys, I use them for muskrat trapping and everything. I use the same ones, that's why the tape is on there. What I do is I'll take one end of this guy, and this is my stake driver, and I'll show you a little better in just a second. So I'll take my stake driver, right here is where I'm gonna make my set. I put my rope on there, I stretch this guy out until my rope gets tight. You can kind of see that the rope is tight there. And then I'll push in my electric fence post. So now I know if it snows or if a farmer happens to work my setup, I can just put this guy over the top of my electric fence post, pull the string tight, and then I basically, when I'm trying to find a set, then I just kind of poke around with this, and I basically am only looking in an arc to find my set now. So by every coyote set, it's 10 feet roughly. I don't have exact measurement of it. I'll have an electric fence post standing, you know, in the fence line, in the woods, you know, just, I try to keep them so they're out of the way. I've actually had them standing in the wide open field. I don't know that they matter. I've never had any sign that the coyotes or anything are shy of the gray fence post. But so that's what I do. Before I really even make my set, or as I'm starting to make my set, I'll stab this guy in the ground, pull that thing tight, put my stake in, and then I throw the rope back in my bag. All right, this is my stake driver. It's roughly 3 foot long. It's a 7/16 round bar, and then I've ground it to kind of a point on the end, and I'm actually going to sharpen that a little bit this year because it's getting kind of a dull point right on the very end of it. And then I got this about a 6 or 7 inch long, you know, 3/8 inch plate, and this rod happened to be threaded, so I had a nut on the top and bottom of my plate, and then I just welded it to the rod, to the plate. It gives me a spot to hold it, and then I hammer with my right hand to, you know, to hit that. Keeps my hand over here out of the way, so I'm not banging on my hand or hitting my hand with my hammer. This is my second one. The first one was kind of beat up and the rod was getting kind of bent and whatever. It wasn't as good a rod as this one is, so I built a second one. I typically will carry both the first couple days of the season just in case, because I have forgot this. You know, I'll stab it in next to a set and I forgot to pick it up. But yeah, that's my stake driver. Down here, we'll just skip to this guy quick. This is just dried dirt. It's not waxed dirt or anything like that. It's just dried dirt. It's not sifted or anything like that. If it gets super muddy, I have that so I can actually still cover my sets. I absolutely do not like using it. So I'll use my peat moss over my trap and then just put a little of this dirt just to keep my peat moss. I think, you know, it isn't going to smell like the dirt that's there. I don't know. I absolutely do not like using it, but if it's muddy, you can't sift dirt. I have the dry dirt. This is just another gallon container, and I have a 5-gallon pail of it. Last year I used like a half a gallon of dry dirt. There was a couple days where it was wet enough I couldn't really sift to cover my sets. This guy here is my dirt hole pounder. So all it is about 1.5 inches OD, 1.25 inches or roughly ID, or it might be a touch bigger than that. Basically all I do, and then I got just a handle to keep my hand out of the way. I welded a second plate on the top because you can see how much it flattens that out. That's 2 years worth of wear on there. We added this guy after the first season because it cracks. They like to crack in the corner, so we added a pipe over the top to kind of strengthen it. The first year it was cracked at the top. Last year it cracked at the bottom. So I welded it back up this year and just ground it off. It's not super important. What I did is I just cut the side out of the pipe. So once I pound in that much dirt, the dirt chunk comes out the side, and then I can pitch it out on the field, or, you know, pitch it out into the woods or wherever, just so it's out of the way. I really like that design. This is actually my second one. This one's a little heavier duty than the first one, but I only get about a season out of them before it cracks. Especially when the ground gets froze. I have a hard time with it cracking, you know, because you really got to pound on them. I kind of wonder if cutting it at a 45 kind of contributed to that. So what I did is this year I made a new one. It's just a straight pipe. It's a piece of weld pipe. It's like 1 3/8 OD, again about 1.25 inch ID. And I left it open to the top, but I did not cut any holes in the side. So my thinking is I can hang on to it like that and then pound on this side of it. And I put the bracings underneath it to kind of help support it. And then the dirt's going to come out the very top of it instead of out the side like that one. And I left the end of it straight. I pounded one hole with it just to test it before I painted it. It worked fine. I don't know. We're gonna give this design a try and just see how it works. I like the nice clean hole that a pipe gives you like that. Like this pipe, you know, you get a perfect hole. It kind of packs the dirt in there too, so your hole doesn't cave in so much. Even if the dirt is somewhat dry, it still does. It keeps like a nice pristine hole. But this year as well, I went to the National Trappers Association convention in Iowa, and every person that was doing Coyote demos was using augers. So I decided, I've been thinking about it for a few years of trying it. I ended up buying one. This is an 1.75 inch diameter auger. It was quite a bit longer. It was like 6 inches longer than that. You know, so the auger itself, the rod was like that much longer. I cut it off because basically I'm running that's as deep as I need my dirt hole. So if I run it in that deep, I'm more than 8 inches in the ground. That's as deep as I run my dirt holes. I run about 8 inches. Even with this, I pound it basically up to here, so you're about 8 inches roughly in there. And then I'm using a DeWalt hammer drill for drilling. The reason why I wanted the hammer drill is because it had the multiple speeds, so I can run it on one and you can drill a hole. You know, and what I kind of found to do with it is drill it in and then pull out, drill in, pull out, and it kind of throws the dirt. You don't get as nice and clean of a hole because it kind of blows the top of the hole open. We're going to play around with it this year, but this is going to be my #1 hole making tool, especially for the first few days of the season when the ground ain't froze. Once the ground freezes, then I probably might end up having to go back to one of these other pipes. We'll just see how well that thing really works in the frozen ground. I kind of have my suspicions it's not going to work that well, but I have 3 batteries for it, and I bought 2 chargers for it, so I can basically recharge 2 batteries overnight every night just to make sure that they stay charged up. All right, so we got hole making, we got stake driver, because I use, my stake driver too. I don't know if I really said, but I use Berkshire heavy duty stakes on my Coyote traps, and I use standard Berkshires on my raccoon traps. So I use the same driver for everything. I do have a few wolf fangs, and I have a separate driver. I've only ever used them one time, and that was only because the ground was froze. And I put a trap over a beaver hole or a badger hole to catch a badger, and I couldn't get a Berkshire in, so I used the wolf fang. But otherwise, this is the only thing I use is just Berkshire stakes, and they work good. All right, back to the bag. This is one of the more important things, and everything that's in here is in here in the exact place that I use it. And so I loaded it up with everything. I typically clean everything out of here before at the end of the season, so that it doesn't set in here all year. And then I store all my my old bait and lure in a 5-gallon pail with a sealable lid on it, and I store it in my basement from one year to the next. So everything that in here is actually from last year. I will use all the older stuff first, and then I'll move on to the brand new stuff. This is called, called a Trapper's Tote. You can buy it on Minnesota Trapline Products. I just looked a little bit ago, they have it on there. One thing that I did is I actually took, and I might not be able to get it out of there now. This is a chunk of 3/8 plywood. I just measured the diameter, or the width and the length of the bottom of this, and cut that board. Otherwise, the whole bag, let's see if I can kind of show you, the whole bag kind of wants to collapse. Like, it will fold it up, and the bottom of the bag would fold in half too. Well, it gets to be kind of a pain when you're trying to stick out your gear and stuff back in there when your bag isn't wide enough, you know, because I throw like my sifter in there and my trapping hammer in there, and I set peat moss in there. That guy goes in here, you know. And if, like, to get that, and then to get my hole tool laying in here, my hole tool typically lays next to my sifter on one side or the other, so it all kind of fits in there nicely. But without that board in there, the bag wants to kind of collapse, and then they didn't go in there that well. And then when I go to make a coyote set, this bag is always right there, always, and it's setting just like it is right now. There's no pouches on this side of the bag. All the pouches are on this side and on the two ends. So everything for making the set is inside my bag, including the pan covers. I do keep in that end pocket, these are just a few of these gloves thrown in a Ziploc bag. Once in a while, I'll tear my glove, I'll catch it on the end of my stake driver or, one of my tools, and I'll tear a hole in my glove. I always have an extra one because, like I said, when I get out of the truck, I grab a pair out of a box that's riding on my seat, and then I always have a few extra ones, so I just throw a few in a bag and I throw them in that end pocket. We'll just lay them there. All right, on this end of the bag, I'm going to go through and I'll show you what I use for baits and lures, and I'll show you how I have everything set up. So just starting with, this is Cavin's Predator Bait Plus. What I do, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but I take and use packing tape, and I tape round and around all my baits and lures and tape over the top of the tag, because if it rains, then it will wear these off really badly, especially the lures. And then I also, on the lids of everything, I write what it is essentially. So Predator Bait Plus, this one here is Cavin's Hiawatha Valley, so I got HV on the top of it. And then what I do too, I write the year on the tag before I put the packing tape on there. Again, so we'll kind of go through let's put this back in here and I'll show you how I have it set up, and then we'll go through everything that's actually in here. So what I actually run is I run two 16-ounce jars of bait on this end. In this pocket right here, this is backbreaker, a 4-ounce jar of backbreaker. In this one here, you might not be able to see it down in there. I don't use a lot of it, but it's called Ornery Badger. It's in here. I'll pull it out in a minute. So Ornery Badger, I use it as kind of a change up set, or if I do see where a badger is digging holes and stuff and I'm making a coyote set close by, I'll use Ornery Badger as my lure. And then in here I have 3 lures on the top and I have 3 lures on the bottom. They are always in it. Every year I make sure I put them back in the exact same order that they're in right now. Again, I'll go through what each one of them is in just a second. The bag comes with 2 pouches on the side here. Let's see here, I got that. It comes with a shoulder strap, which I do use once in a while when I'm walking a ways from my truck. Typically I drive right up to my coyote set, so I don't ever use that a lot, but I do use it once in a while. So it has basically 2 urine bottle spots on the side. So I don't have any in here, and I'll wait till the day before the season, I'll fill this up. This is just a pint jug with a little spray nozzle. I use red fox urine, and I will have the fox urine in that hole. This hole here I basically use for trash. Not every time I make a set, when I'm done making a set, obviously I throw away my pair of gloves. So I make my whole set, then I bait and lure it using the same rubber gloves, but then I take them off and I throw them in a 5-gallon pail with a trash bag in it that I have in the back of my truck. So I basically have a trash can in my truck. This here I throw trash in. Like if I do happen to tear my glove really bad, I'll take it off and I'll stuff it in here. Most of the time when I'm remaking sets, like if my pan cover, if my muffin wrapper is laying there all kind of crunched up or whatever, I'll pick it up and I'll throw it in here. One, because I don't want the trash, but I don't want the smell of that laying in my coyote set area. I want to focus their attention on my set. So I'll pick up any of like the trash that's laying around and I just stuff it in here. When it gets maybe half full, I'll take all the stuff out of here and throw it in that garbage pail that I got in my truck. But this is just kind of a nice thing at my set. If I'm sitting here like this and remaking my set and I see like, oh, there's part of my muffin wrapper, I can grab it, just stuff it in here and keep remaking my set. So I use this as just kind of a trash compartment. And then in this end here, I have my bag with extra gloves in there, and I have a jar of bait, and I use one more lure that I don't use on very many sets. I kind of, again, use it as a kind of a change-up lure, but so I just keep it in on that one. It's pretty thick lure as well, so if my jar is laying on the side, I don't really have to worry about it oozing out and like staying in my bag either. All right, we'll go through here. We're gonna take a couple of these things out of here just to lighten my bag up while I'm moving it around. I'll go through quick every bait and lure that I have in here. So I showed you I have Predator Bait Plus, Cavin's Predator Bait Plus. Oh, these two are always in that order. Predator Bait Plus on this side, Hiawatha Valley on that side. I don't even have to look anymore in my bag, and I can just reach. I know exactly which one I'm reaching, I'm grabbing in here. I know which flap I need to go under, and then which spot they're in. So I got Predator Bait Plus, I got Cavin's Hiawatha Valley. In this pocket here, these are a little tougher to get out. You got to kind of push them up from the bottom. I use Dobbin's Backbreaker. Again, I write the year on there. This one I didn't happen to write. Normally I got BB written on the cap of it, but I know what it is. It's always in the same spot. I use Backbreaker for flat sets. I'll use like Backbreaker and Gusto as a flat set. Basically, like I'll punch 2 little holes next to my trap. You'll kind of to the side of my trap, and I'll put Backbreaker in one and Gusto in the other. I don't think I've ever made a set with just Backbreaker on there. And then, like I said, in this one here, let's see if I can get it out of there for you. Again, I don't use this one very much, but I do keep it in my bag right there. The only reason why I don't keep like that other lure in here is because these pockets are just a little bit too big and they're open to the bottom, that this extra one over here, this guy will fall right through, falls right out the bottom. But yeah, this is Schmattz Extreme Performance Ornery Badger Lure. Again, I've used like half of this jar. I've only used it basically on about 1 set a year, it seems like, but I do keep it in there. Like I said, once in a while I make like a change up set. Some years I have 4 or 5 sets with it. Like last year I had 1 set with it, is it. Okay, under these side pouches, again, I write on the top so I do know what they are without pulling them out. And then again, when you're putting these in and out of there, these are the ones that running the tape, I basically go round and around, make 2 laps around it with packing tape. And again, I write the year on first. This is Cavin's Gusto. Just make sure you can see that. Cavin's Gusto. And I write a big G on the lid of it. It's the only lure I use that has this type of bottle on it that has the small cap on there, so I do know without really looking what it is. This is super skunky smelling. I use it if I'm on like the west side of a fence row and I think the animals are going to run on the east side. I'll put this stuff, or same for like, because we have predominantly a northwest wind, so if I can't trap the east side or a south side of a fence line, I'll use like a Gusto on the opposite side of the fence line, you know, the side I can, hoping that the smell of this will pull them across the fence line. The next one I have here is GH2, Fox Hollow GH2. Again, it's a fairly skunky smelling, but it's got quite a bit different smell to it. It's not nearly as strong as the Gusto, and it's got some other smells in there that I like. This probably, between Gusto and this one, are probably my 2 top producing lures. All right, my next lure that I use here is Fox Hollow's Bounty Hunter. It's not quite as skunky smelling as GH2 and Gusto. It is a little bit. Pretty much all the lures are somewhat skunky smelling except for one of them. I like it. It's kind of a little bit of a change up from GH2. To me, it's quite a bit different smelling to me. It's obviously not as strong as skunk, but it's got a little bit different smell to it. The top 3 here are probably my 3 best lures that I use on my line. Again, that's going to change from, you know, one place to the next, but those 3 typically do me very well. They are always in this order in my bag, and everything that's in my bag that I've been showing you, I put them in the exact same spot year after year, so I know exactly where they are, and I don't even really have to look. I just reach and I grab them. In the bottom pouch here, this one here, is Cavan's Violator 7. This has got a little bit of coyote glands in there, from what I understand anyway. It's a little more of a glandler, it's skunky, very little skunk smell to this guy. I don't know what it is about Violator 7, but I've caught a disproportionate amount of badgers on this lure over any of the other lures in my bag. So I don't know if there's badger glands in this lure or not. Again, I have just V7 written on the top of it so I can see what it is without pulling it out of my bag. The next one here is Cavan's Minnesota Red. I write just MN on the top for Minnesota. This one here has very little skunk smell to it. I think it's more of like a red fox gland lure. Actually, it does say that right on there, red fox gland lure. I like it if I'm using like a set with like GH2. If I'm gonna make a double set or 2 sets in one location, I'll use something like Minnesota Red in the other one. It's, you know, it's a lot tamer. It's not as like slappy in the face strong as those other ones are, but I do catch a fair amount of animals, both red fox, coyotes. I catch way more coyotes than red fox with it, but I do catch red fox on that one. The last one I've had in my bag for a couple years now. It didn't produce very well last year, but the year before it did really well. It is from Dakota Line Snares. It's Lethal Dose. It's a new lure that he come out with a couple years ago. The stuff I had 2 years ago was a little more liquidy, and it seemed to work. This stuff here is kind of dry inside, and I don't know, it doesn't stick to your lure stick very well. So I don't know if he changed the formula on it just a little bit from one year to the next, because like I said, this is from last year, and I bought a couple bottles of it, but I did not do very well on Lethal Dose last year. So we're going to give it another year. This is going to be the third year with it. The first year I did very well with only on a couple sets. We're going to give it a good shot again this year. If it doesn't produce, it'll probably come out of my bag next year, or I'll use up whatever remaining I have of it, but I won't buy any more of it. The last one was the one that I have on the end up here. The last lure I have. This is Cavan's Canine Force. Again, this is a pretty tame lure. It is a food call lure for fox, coyote, bobcat, and raccoon, it says on there. Again, I use this when I'm making like double sets in one spot or 2 sets in one location, something like that. It's kind of a nice change up. I don't typically use it on a lot of sets though. It seems like I'll have it on 3 or 4 sets a year. I do make catches with it, but I just, for some reason, have never like added it to the main rotation. We'll see how the Dakota Line Snares Lethal Dose does this year. This one might take its place in that pouch. But yeah, this one I typically always have rolling around in this end pouch. And then I use, this is Cavan's Minnesota brand Predator bait. I think it's called Minnesota Valley Predator bait if you order it online. If you buy it at Shields, this is what it's called, and it's only in a 9-ounce jar instead of a 16-ounce jars like these two. I bought a whole bunch of it in 2018 because they were discontinuing it at my Shields, and then now they carry it again. They didn't have it for 1 year, and now they do again. So I've had it for a couple years. It still looks identical to it did when I bought it, and I will continue to use it. This one, the difference between this one and the Predator Bait Plus, this one doesn't have quite as strong as a smell. So again, I'll use this one with like a lure that doesn't have quite as strong a smell, and then I'll use Predator Bait Plus and Hiawatha Valley with some of the stronger ones. And that seems like some coyotes, I feel like you kind of blow their nose, you know, by running the super strong baits and lures, and I kind of think I like this, and I use these 3 baits pretty much on a third of my sets each. I don't really favor one or the other. I do like Cavan's baits, obviously. I've tried a couple others and they have not really produced for me. I had one last year that didn't really produce for me, so we're sticking with the 3 from Cavan's because they produce consistently on my line every year. On the inside of my bag, there's these pouches kind of on the inside. I don't know how well you can see that. So there's pouches on the inside, and on this side, the only thing I keep in the pouches is a flat screwdriver. I use it for scraping the dirt off my traps a little bit when I'm going to reset them. I can also tune with these a little bit. And it's always in the middle pouch on that side. And then one more thing that I throw in there is basically this is just a cable with 2 loops on the end. You can kind of see it's twisted up a little because I've used it. But it basically just has 2 loops and just a chunk of little rubber hose in the middle on it. I use it for carrying animals. If I'm a ways from my truck or something like that, you just slip the foot through each end, and I got a nice handle and I can carry them. This guy I typically put in one of these bigger pouches on this side, and it just rides around in there. I actually have 2 of those made. I have one in my raccoon bucket as well, and I keep one in my coyote bag all the time. The last couple pieces here is a good pocket knife. You could scrape a lot of dirt and do a lot of things with a good pocket knife. So this is just a buck knife that I got. Just a single blade buck knife. It doesn't have to be super sharp or anything like that because I don't cut really a lot with it. Once in a while, like if grass gets tangled around like the swivels and stuff, you can kind of use the point on the end of this guy to kind of dig into that grass and like cut it, and then you can peel it off a little easier. And the last and probably most important tool on my entire line is this. I think they're called alignment pliers. So it's got a side cutter in there for cutting wire, and then it's got like a normal pliers jaw there. I use this thing for absolutely everything. It actually has a pliers jaw on this side as well. I very rarely use that, but this thing, it rides in my pocket all the time, every day, all day when I'm running my trap line. I use it for adjusting traps, doing it, I can grab the nut on a pan for like on a Duke trap, and adjust the pan tension. I can bend dogs with it. I typically have a second pliers just like this that rides around in my truck in case I really need to do some, mechanics work on my traps or whatever. So I have, a spare one in my truck at all time. But yeah, this alignment pliers, I lose this thing about 4 or 5 times a year. I use it for everything on our farm here too, so I use it all the time. I'll set it down someplace and I damn near cry when I lose the thing because for some reason this particular one, I don't know, it stayed tight and everything way longer than any other pliers I've ever had, but it is the #1 tool on my trap line. Raccoon, coyote, any kind of trapping, I wouldn't do it without this pliers. All right, guys, I think that's pretty much it for my gear I use for my coyote trapping. I think I pretty well went through everything. I went through all the bait and lures I use, so you guys know what I'm using. I'm in the upper Midwest, in west central Minnesota. If you go south of here, I probably wouldn't use a lot of gusto, honestly. But it does get cold, like we'll get, around 0 degrees temperatures by the time I quit trapping. That gusto still smells. I mean, you can get out of your truck and you can still smell it there when it's that cold. So there are some of these things that, again, I use Cavan's baits and lures because one, I feel like they're from Minnesota here, central Minnesota. So I feel like they're a little more designed to work in the type of terrain in the area that I'm trapping. If I was down in Mississippi or Louisiana, would I be using these same baits and lures? Probably not. I would actually probably try to find a bait and lure maker that's from the south because I feel like they're probably using baits and lures that work in that area. So just because I'm using these doesn't mean that they're going to work on your trap line either. And again, everybody uses them a little bit different. I use about a glob, about, I don't know, size of a quarter maybe, not even that much of bait. And I use usually a 1/4 inch round stick, about that much lure, like just enough so it's stuck to the end of my stick, and that's it for lure. So I can probably make 15 sets out of a jar of lure, if not more than that. But again, I'm using 6 or 7 different lures, so on 45 sets I only ever have 10 sets with one particular lure on there. so they typically last me quite a long time. And then depending on which ones catch, you know, you're going to use more of different lures every year, just depending on which sets catch and which ones you're remaking and reluring. All right, guys, as I'm editing this video, I realized that I forgot one somewhat important piece. As I make my sets, I use an app that tracks which baits and lures and the trap I'm using and that type of information. I'm going to show you that app a little bit. The reason why I use that is, one, it's, you know, it's a GPS app, so it also, I can put a marker where my trap actually is. I'm not going to try to show you the whole area I trap. I'm going to try and show you one set. But what I do is, if I make a catch, I use the exact same bait and lure at that set. I will not change to anything else. That set already, even though like a coyote or a raccoon or anything will level your set, that set still smells like those smells that were already there. So the lure, you know, essentially, unless the coyote eats it or whatever, that smell is going to be there someplace smeared in the catch circle. And same thing with the bait, unless they eat the bait. The bait, maybe in my opinion, ain't quite as critical, because the smell difference in my mind between one and the other is not that great, you know, and they're a lot tamer. If I have a set, say I had Gusto there to begin with, I don't want to use a lure like Canine Force there when I'm remaking it, because that Gusto smell, the skunk smell of the Gusto, is already still there. So we'll quick show you the app here. Alright guys, so the app I use is called Go Trapping. I find it to be really handy. Right now it's just showing the normal, like a land map view. I can turn on the satellite view of it. I clicked it twice. It will show you the you know, an actual satellite image of it. These little red markers are trap locations that I already predetermined. So before the season here, I will go through and I basically have a general idea on where I'm going to be putting my coyote sets. And I actually will, so each set I name it, and I'll show you that. And then I also predetermine my bait and lures for each set. So when I show up to a set, all I do is I open this app, or I basically have it running all the time. I just click on my set, see what bait and lure is there. If I make a catch, I can also put that information in here. And I'll show you quickly how to do that. So what I have here, there's actually two sets. I have them predetermined on either side. There's a drainage ditch here. There's a farm place right here. The fact that they're red means that they're a possible set location. The ones that I still have in here are actually ones I didn't set last year. All the ones that I set last year, I deleted off of here, and I'll re-add them. I typically change the lure and baits from one year to the next in each location. You can export the data out of this app, and then I can look to see what bait and lure I had at what set last year, and then I'll just make sure I put a different bait and lure there this year. So we're just gonna... Alright guys, so on this app, the white trap is one indicating that that trap is set. The red one is indicating a potential set. We're just gonna click on that trap here, and then it will show you the name. That is the name that I give it. It shows you the type of set, and then it'll show you the trap. So I'm going to use a set for make a dirt hole there. All that's customizable. You can add your own different type of set names, so trench sets, flat sets. It comes with a bunch of preloaded ones, but you can add your own. I'm not really going to go through all that today. Maybe down the line I'll do a little more video on how to use this app. I'm going to be using an MB550 here. My lures, I use fox urine on every set. It doesn't matter. I use fox urine on every set. And then you got GH2. And the bait I'm going to be using is Predator Bait Plus. You can see that this one has a coyote. It shows you the number of catches and what animal species. And then down here it says just tap to add a catch. So I'm just going to tap on it to add a catch. All right. So it shows the catches at the top. Again, it shows a lot of the same information there. Dirt hole, MB550s, the bait and lures I'm using. Down here at the bottom, it has done, delete, pull, and catch. So when I'm done at the end of this, before the trap is set, this says reset there. So you tap on it, then it will make the set active. When I'm done at the end of the season, I will tap on that pull and it will pull the set. If I want to make a catch, I just tap on catch. It brings up the list of all the animals. I add some of my own in there, so like the catch but got out is one I added. Dug up traps, miss or deer, and some of the other animal species I've added in here. So you just select, like we'll just select, let's see, we'll do a red fox this time. And then we'll click OK. And then down here at the bottom, it has take a picture of the last catch. So you just tap on that. It will just pull up your normal camera screen. It actually saves them inside of the app, but you can actually get them off of your phone just like any other picture. They just puts them under like a Go Trapping folder underneath like your data on your phone. So I try to take pictures. A lot of the pictures you guys seen in my videos from last year of coyote catches were off of this app. And again, like I said, when I remake my set, so if I pull up to a set and it's set off or something like that, where I have a catch in there, I will add the catch information on there, but then I look to see what bait and lures are on there. And then when I get out, I know exactly what I'm putting in there again. I find that's somewhat important. Like I said, I don't want to be adding 10 different, over the course of 3 or 4 catches. If you didn't put the same stuff there, you could end up with like 5 or 6 different lures basically in that same catch circle, plus all the animal smell and everything like that. So I try to keep it all consistent. I basically put the same stuff back every time I remake that set. Towards the end of the season, like last season, I had just like a little glob of Hiawatha Valley lure or bait left. So the last set that I remade, I just used that last little glob just so I didn't have to store one little glob of bait for the winter for this season. Otherwise, like I said, I pretty much use exactly what my app says. Like I said, at the end of the season, I can export this out. It will export out, basically list each set, and then it'll list the catches you made, and it gives each set a number. And then it'll list a catch. It'll say like whatever catch you selected, it will say that was on set, whatever the set number is. So you can kind of compare. I actually will go through and figure out, I had catches on 10 different sets that were using this bait or that lure or that type of stuff. It stays pretty consistent year after year, honestly, on my line. But I typically go through that information and use it to just kind of see how my baits and lures are doing. When I test stuff, if I'm trying new stuff on my line, like the lethal dose, for example, I can keep track of pretty close. You don't have to try and remember, 6 months from now what, how many catches you made on what sets with that bait or lure. I don't know. I feel like that's pretty much everything. If you guys think of something that I didn't go over that you'd like to know more about, leave comments down below. I'll try to, answer the best I can. And like I said, if I really did miss something super important, I'll put up a second video on just showing you, a few of the things I may have missed. Otherwise, I just want to thank you guys for watching Schmattz Outdoors. Tight chains, guys. We'll see you guys out on the line. It's coming quick.